Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending this pre-recorded presentation on the Division of Senior and Disability Services NRI project. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of the project timeline and key milestones broken down by years. You will see how we progress from research and planning to design and development with implementation of all tools including resource allocation. Each phase builds on the last, ensuring careful planning, testing, and refinement. Additional resources will be provided at the end of this presentation for further information and research. Before we jump into the presentation, let's review some of the acronyms that you will see and hear. CMS is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. CHIME-DD refers to an NRI tool for child and youth mental health developmental disability. ID refers to the NRI tool for intellectual disability. ICAP is the SDS Inventory for Client and Agency Planning Assessment Tool. And CAT is the SDS Consumer Assessment Tool. Why is Alaska implementing NRI? This project was initiated as a response to strong stakeholder advocacy as well as Alaska legislative and executive branch support, which provided funding to begin the project. What benefits does NRI offer? NRI assessment tools are standardized and validated tools that will support person-centered planning. NRI assessment tools align with national best practices to better support older adults and people who experience disabilities. This project will also better position the Department of Health to address changes and improvements to the home and community-based service system long sought by recipients and stakeholders. Stakeholders have expressed their interest in a system which allows more flexibility around choosing which services will best meet their needs. SDS plans to use resource allocation as a way for people to be assessed for needs and be assigned a budget based on where they fall within the case mix distribution. This will provide a more person-centered approach and the necessary budget predictability for the state and federal government. The current CAT and ICAP assessment tools in use at SDS are unable to be modified and modernized to meet the evolving needs of recipients and planning for self-directed services. What are some challenges in the NRI implementation? When you see the timeline for this project, it may appear to be longer than anticipated before you see the results that stakeholders have advocated for and desire. The project timeline and milestones are carefully thought out and vetted with the aid of the technical assistance vendor with experience launching the NRI in other places. Patience will be necessary during the large and complex implementation process. If implementation goes too fast, if SDS cuts corners, or ignores best practices and lessons learned from other states who have implemented NRI, undesirable outcomes may occur, impacting recipients and the department. There will be impacts to the time each assessment will take to complete. All NRI assessments will be conducted in person. State assessors will be available in the recipient's home to guide them through the new assessment and answer any questions that they have. SDS is committed to a successful implementation, which will take time and steady focus. SDS wishes to ease the degree of change on our recipients, stakeholders, and staff, and ensure we do this right the first time. In 2023, the project pre-planning phase began. This included conducting research on various NRI assessment tools being considered for implementation. Alaska viewed demonstrations of multiple NRI software systems to understand the software and vendor options available to meet the project's automation needs. Additionally, multiple meetings were conducted with CMS discussing the project and its goals. CMS is a critical partner in support of this project. In 2024, SDS contracted with advancing states to participate in a multi-state initiative called Enhancing NRI. This provides for technical support of Alaska's implementation of the NRI suite of assessment tools. The technical support from Enhancing NRI is also critical to the success of the project, offering NRI expertise and training support. SDS requested federal support of the planning phase to procure a software vendor that will automate the assessment tools that will be implemented. SDS received CMS federal approval in October of 2024, including an enhanced federal match of 90% federal funds and 10% state funds to support the automation of the assessment tools. In 2025, SDS is procuring the automation vendor for the assessment tools. This is a lengthy process with multiple review and approval steps involved at the state and federal levels. Once SDS has identified a vendor through the procurement process, SDS will seek approval from CMS to enter into contract with the vendor as well as request federal funding for the design, development, and implementation phase of the project. SDS will implement the NRI Home Care or HC tool first. The work to analyze and configure the HC tool using the CAT outcomes has already begun, with focus on replicating the current nursing facility level of care outcomes and personal care services, or PCS, hours calculations. Resource allocation is the process of deciding how to share available resources, such as funding or services, based on people's needs. It helps make sure individuals get the right level of support, that resources are used fairly and efficiently, and that services meet the needs of the recipients. The foundational work for this element is initiated early in the project lifecycle to ensure a proper foundation is set for the software and the program support required. Additionally, SDS must gather a year's worth of assessment data to build the resource allocation system. In 2026, SDS plans to test the Alaska Configured Home Care tool and train staff on its use. Once successful training and testing has occurred, SDS will begin soft launch of the tool in assessing applicants and recipients of the APDD and ALI waivers, as well as Community First Choice and State Plan Personal Care Services. The purpose of the soft launch is to test the tools in real assessment situations and be able to identify technical or programmatic issues and resolve them before fully rolling out the home care tool. The soft launch period will also support the need for SDS to gather a year's worth of assessment data to build resource allocation for the HC tool. Also in 2026, SDS plans to begin design of the tools that support the IDD and ISW waivers. These tools, called the Intellectual Disabilities Tool, or ID tool, and the Child and Youth Mental Health and Developmental Disability Tool, or CHIME-DD tool, will begin analysis and configuration of these tools using the current ICAP outcomes. SDS is focused on ensuring the ID and CHIME-DD tools will replicate the individuals with intellectual disabilities level of care outcomes from the current tool. In 2027, SDS intends to launch the HC tool in its finalized form for applicants and recipients of the APDD and ALI waiver, CFC Personal Care Services, and State Plan Personal Care Services. SDS plans to test the Alaska Configured ID and CHIME-DD tools and train staff on their use. Once successful training and testing has occurred, SDS will begin soft launch of these tools and assessments for applicants and recipients of the IDD and ISW waivers. Again, the purpose of the soft launch is to test the tools in real assessment situations and be able to identify technical or programmatic issues and resolve them before fully rolling out the tools. The soft launch period will also support the need for SDS to gather a year's worth of assessment data to build resource allocation for the ID and CHIME-DD tools. In 2028, SDS intends to launch the ID and CHIME-DD tools in their finalized form for applicants and recipients of the IDD and ISW waivers. Also in 2028, SDS plans to go live with HC tool resource allocation phase of the system after spending a period of time gathering assessment data to build the system and make sure the data from the tools is accurate and reliable. In 2029, SDS plans to go live with the ID and CHIME-DD tools resource allocation phase of the system after spending a period of time gathering the assessment data to build the system and make sure the data from the tools is accurate and reliable. In 2030, all NRI assessment tools and resource allocation will be fully implemented and in operations. The division is excited to modernize assessment tools in Alaska to more effectively understand its recipients, manage population health, evaluate programs, and implement new approaches to service planning and flexibility. If you would like to learn more about NRI and stay up to date with the project, the following resources are available. To learn more about NRI, you can visit nri.org for more information about the tools and how they support person-centered planning. Additionally, SDS worked with the project technical assistance vendor, HCBS Strategies, to create a pre-recorded webinar, which you can watch on our YouTube channel. You can click on the link on this slide to be redirected. We also mailed a letter to recipients about the new assessment tools on June 10, 2024, and a copy is linked here for you to review. Along with this presentation, you should have received an FAQ PDF document that answers some common questions. You can sign up for SDS e-alerts to stay updated using this link. And you can email us directly with questions at this email address below.